What's up, everybody? Happy Sunday to you. Welcome to the Sunday morning show here with Line Movement. PeterOverzet, Joe Holka joining me, Dieter Kurtenbach, breaking down the two games in this divisional round. And guys, how are we all standing after those Saturday games that everyone was so wise to fade? Joe, how you looking?
I'm feeling good. Yeah, I think that yesterday was kind of a little bit as expected. We had a couple of games that were a little bit gross, and Stephon Diggs just continues to pay my rent, so that's positive. But outside of that, someone was calling me grumpy today earlier on my stream. More or
Fun
less,
job.
I think that the theme of this morning is that if you have some failures in your lineups, if things have not gone as according to plan, you got to blow up your teams. I don't care if DraftKings says you're winning money at
Yeah.
this moment. Like we got to be honest with ourselves at some point, right, Pete?
You were grumpy yesterday too, Joe. I could tell.
Maybe that could be true.
It's been a grumpy weekend for Joe, and then he wins showdown with Stephon Diggs. You got to be in a good mood, Joe.
I'm
Come on,
I'm in a
Joe.
great mood. I'm trying to help people, Pete. I'm not trying to be their friend.
He's doing the reality TV show cliche. I'm not here to make friends. I'm here to make you money.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, no, that's great. I thought we were friends. I thought we were building something fairly special.
Oh, I'm
but
friends
I
with you
guess
guys. I'm
screw me.
just not
Okay.
friends with the chat. I'm trying to help the chat. You
I
guys,
mean,
you guys
listen,
don't need my help.
we could try to, do both at the same time. I know that might be tricky, but we'll endeavor nevertheless. Do we want to talk about some games? Do we want to get into this just like right away and
I just
get
want
rid
to
of
make
all these
sure Joe
pleasantries?
is here for the right reasons.
I'm good. Should we recap anything that happened yesterday? Was it that gross that we don't care? I don't know.
I
Like
mean, we
Pete,
can
like
we can
what,
talk.
how you looking so far? Like I know you were mostly light on yesterday, as I was as well. But if you played any of the quarterbacks yesterday, outside of maybe Aaron Rodgers, like your week's not necessarily over, but you got to get
Yeah,
weird. I think.
Yeah, I think the big ones, if you played the Bills defense, those came in pretty low owned in the 15 to 20% range, depending on your contest. You're off to a really nice start there. Obviously, if you played Stephon Diggs, I think his ownership was a little lower than we maybe anticipated. But yeah, if you have not hit the nuts, you don't have the Akers Diggs Bills combo or the
right.
Lazard in there. You need to be thinking about how to get differentiated because Joe mentioned it. The people in the chat, you see it on our chat.
Yep.
Everyone is loading up on this Chiefs Browns game. And the reason I don't necessarily hate it is because I think there are a few ways to get unique within this game. But you do really have to be conscious of how chalky you are because
Yeah.
you don't want to be playing a 6v6 with people, especially if you have a Singletary dud in your lineup from yesterday.
Let's
It's
catch
dangerous.
Jeter up for a second though, because the
Please.
chalk yesterday, like somehow
Yeah.
it was Devin Singletary. Like people wanted to play that guy for actual American dollars. So he was like, that was one of the biggest differences actually, Pete, versus like some of our stuff versus the lower stake stuff. Like in
Right.
our stuff, people realized that just was probably a bad idea. He was like around 25% owned, but in like the $11 like lottery ticket tournaments, he was like close to 40%. So if you have Singletary in your team, you got to get weird at that point. Like some of the highest owned players, Akers gets there. Aaron Jones, a 1 yard short of the rushing bonus, which is
Right.
brutal. Stephon Diggs was like 25, 30%, depending on where you're at. And then there was some Mark Andrews failure in there. There was some Singletary failure in there. Obviously, if you played Josh Allen, he was like 13 to 15% owned, which isn't a big deal, but those teams are completely dead now. So
Right.
that's the recap, Dieter. If you didn't hit on the right pieces, you're in trouble.
Well, that's how it works when you have to split up the slate like this. And man, how do you think all those Singletary folks felt when they threw the ball for the first 20 damn plays? And it was a great move. Like that's what you had to do against Baltimore. But yeah, you're sitting there with Singletary, and it's like they're never going to hand him the ball. That must have been absolutely hilarious for anybody sweating it out. And by hilarious, I mean just gut wrenching. Do we want to make them some money? Do we want to make our non-friends money today, guys? Is that the plan?
We can
Let's
do
get
it.
into
Yeah,
it.
we got to keep this business relationship going. It's purely transactional. Let's do some transactions.
Business. Kansas City minus 9.5 right now. 66% of the handle is on the Chiefs, 50% of the tickets. So they're not going to be changing this line anytime soon. And then Browns plus 375 on the money line. Total is 57. 78% of the tickets currently are over. That's the betting stuff. Let's get into the DFS stuff. Joe, first and foremost, we know that everybody's going to be in on this game. This is the hot one. This is a bit of danger zone, though, because, again, you might be getting into the Tums situation, too much chalk. Where are some maybe the sleepers that we could find in this game? Some guys a little bit deeper down that might not be getting the same kind of share as a Travis Kelce or even a Mahomes.
Yeah, this is a crazy game from a DFS perspective because both sides of it, there's just such a big difference in price versus like Baker and Mahomes. If you move down to Baker, you can do a lot of different things with your team. Obviously, Tyreek and Kelsey are extremely expensive as well. So that premium Kelsey, Tyreek, Mahomes stack, you're basically putting yourself in a position where you're not going to have much of the Saints in game number 4. So that's kind of the conundrum here. It depends on kind of where your teams are at currently if you're able to make that work. But Pete, you say you don't want it to, or that it shouldn't be transactional. Like, look at our chat right now. People want to know Hill or Kamara, Kelsey or Hill. That seems like as transactional as it gets, man. But I want to hear your thoughts on what's going on with the Kansas City running back situation, because that's kind of opening everything up for what we need to do right now.
Yeah, I was we were talking about it in our chat earlier, and I feel pretty strongly that I want Darrell Williams in this spot here. In week 16, we got a lot of valuable information on how the Chiefs feel about this backfield because it was a must-win game against the Falcons, and Clyde Edwards-Helaire was out. In that game, Darrell Williams saw 47 of 67 snaps. Bell had the other 20. He out-carried him 10-7, and he also out-targeted Le'Veon Bell there. So to me, that was the team tip hand how they feel about these guys. Do I think Le'Veon Bell is going to sit on the bench the whole game? No, but I think Williams is going to be on the right side of this committee. And there's also kind of a precedent too of how in the playoffs we've seen with Damian Williams in previous years, the Chiefs will just fully commit guy they think gives them the best chance to win, and they'll give him all the touches. So I also think that's within the range of outcomes for him to have like even an 80-90% chunk of this backfield work. So I don't know. I could be being stubborn with this. My age liking these dusty old running backs, but I really do think Darrell Williams is the play today.
I mean, how much are the Chiefs? I look at this game and it seems as if Kansas City is going to throw it a lot. They need to get the ball out of Mahomes' hands fast. I think that the Browns are going to play a lot of quarters coverage. I think the Browns are honestly a better coached team. Andy Reid, we always talk about him coming off of the bye week and how great he is off of the bye week. He's 8-5 against the spread. So I'm sorry, 6-5. It's not like it's anything special in that, man. Like, I'm legitimately curious as to how the splits go. We saw with the Bills yesterday, they'll just throw the ball. They'll just throw the ball first 20 plays, first 25 plays. Kansas City could probably do something like that today, in which case, where's it going to go? If they're going to have to dink and dunk, that's probably trying to play a Chiefs running back in this game. Is it too risky for you, Joe? Are you that concerned that Kansas City, even if they are going to the run game, that they might split up?
Yeah, I think the context of the slate is that now we already have the failure from Singletary at a very similar price point of these Kansas City guys. So able to pass Singletary, it's a big boost to your lineups. I think that the point you make, though, is an interesting one because we just saw it with Singletary, like when there wasn't like a true back like that they had to go to a ton. So maybe that's just something in favor maybe of DeMarcus Robinson, McCole Hardman. Maybe they get a few more touches because of the uncertainty at running back. Those guys are very cheap as well. So I kind of go back and forth. Like Pete, like you just look at the comps for Darrell Williams, like Travaris Cadet, like that makes me a little bit nervous. Like I could still see Le'Veon Bell coming in and at least getting a touchdown at the goal line, something like that. So I don't think it's like this slam dunk play. They're both so cheap. I'm with you. I'd rather get skew towards the younger, probably more talented guy, but I don't mind. I mean, I think Dieter makes a really good point, man. Maybe if some of these touches just go to DeMarcus Robinson, McCole Hardman, they just get those guys involved, and it's just maybe you don't want any of them, basically. Yeah. Thoughts?
Well, one other thing I want to address, because I have seen a little buzz on Twitter for Darwin Thompson as well. John Doe says, is Darwin out? If not, why would anyone play D. Will over him? So Darwin Thompson had an week 17 game, but that was an exhibition game where they were resting everyone else. A good analog would be Antonio Williams for the Bills in week 17, had 12 carries, 63 yards, 2 touchdowns. He looked great. It doesn't matter. He didn't get any touches. Darwin is not part of their plans. He was a filler there for the exhibition. I do feel pretty confident that we will see a lot of Darrell Williams, probably some Le'Veon Bell, but I do not think Darwin Thompson.
Producer Jordan here. I just switched your server over to West. I think Dieter is dealing with some internet issues. I think that should smooth it out. Sorry about that, dudes. It should be perfectly good for everybody right now, though.
Whatever that point Pete just made was so special, and only Joe and I heard it, and we're going to make all the money now. I'm just telling you that right now. That's how it goes down.
My point was don't play Darwin Thompson. That was my point.
Yeah, we're really into the deep weeds. As for where the targets go, how are we feeling about, obviously, Kelce is going to be chalk. I mean, it's just hard to imagine a circumstance where you have a Browns defense that's going to try to keep everything in front of them and Travis Kelce not getting a lot of receptions at the very least. But where else could thrive in a game like that? Because Tyreek Hill wants to go over the top. I mean, he can certainly do the possession stuff, but he's a big play threat guy, and that might be there in a cover 6 situation, something like that. But the likelihood is that they're going to kind of have to dink and dunk this entire game, Kansas City. I'm curious as to who you think is best suited for a dink and dunk sort of a game, Peter.
Yeah, sorry, for pass catchers on the Chiefs?
Yeah, for pass catchers on the Chiefs, yeah.
Yeah, so obviously with Sammy Watkins out, we have kind of, I guess, 3 punt plays that are being considered. We got Mecole Hardman, we got Demarcus Robinson, and we got Byron Pringle. To be honest, Pringle hasn't been on my radar much. I think the Hardman versus Robinson conversation is very close in that Robinson costs a little more. But he projects, from what I'm seeing, just a little less than Mecole Hardman, who also is going to be a little bit more buzzier, but is cheaper. So like when I'm trying to juggle all the variables in my head, I do feel like it's kind of a wash. And that's one of those situations where I want to make a stand on Darrell Williams over Le'Veon Bell. I'm more comfortable splitting my lineups and playing some Demarcus Robinson, playing some Mecole Hardman. I just can't sit here and say with pure confidence who's going to do better. I think they're both solid, comparable plays.
Joe, let me throw this at you. We haven't even mentioned the Browns yet. Obviously, Baker is a viable option if you don't want to play the chalk of Mahomes, and everyone's going to be looking at the running backs. Do you like any of the pass catchers in this game for the Browns?
Yeah, a guy that we've been talking about all week is Rashard Higgins. He's 4,100. He's been seeing a decent amount of volume. I think that he's kind of in that in between, like where people are probably going to try and get up to Jarvis Landry, or they're just going to play kind of the safer option with Austin Hooper, because Austin Hooper is still extremely cheap. There's going to be a lot of people that figure out ways to play Kelce and Austin Hooper together, just because it's one of those things that fits pretty well. So Higgins might be the guy kind of in between that gets a little bit squeezed, so I think is a very good play. I have, I guess, less interest in a guy like Kareem Hunt than it seems like most people, just because he hasn't been touching the ball a ton overall. I think Peter's kind of on the other side of that one, just because his efficiency can definitely have some touchdown upside. Am I putting some words in your mouth there, Pete, on Kareem?
My thing about Kareem Hunt is more kind of ownership and structural. I think because people want to play the premium Chiefs, they're going to be playing the cheap Browns, which is going to funnel a lot of people to Kareem Hunt and Rashard Higgins. So my kind of thought is you get off of one of the big, Kelce or Hill. You just got to make a choice there. And then try to get up to Landry or Chubb as a unique differentiator, because it's just such a logical construction to go expensive Chiefs, cheap Browns. So trying to flip that in some way, maybe you're playing Darrell Williams and Demarcus Robinson with Mahomes and then getting up to a Chubb or Landry. That's how I kind of want to attack the game, but still be unique, because I do think Hunt Higgins is going to be a very popular combo.
Because the Browns should be able to run the ball really easily against the Chiefs. The Chiefs have one of the worst rush defenses in the NFL. Even when you weigh the DVOA, it's still really bad. And obviously the entire Browns offense is predicated off of that wide zone run and the play action. I don't know. I have a hard time not having Chubb in a lineup today. I would honestly feel very, it might end up being Hunt. It might end up being somebody else, but I do think the Browns are going to get theirs on the ground. What reason should we be concerned about taking Chubb into the lineup other than obviously price and, the off chance that it ain't him? What do you think of Joe?
I like Chubb a lot, because I think that he's going to be that guy that a lot of people talk themselves out of, because like the narrative with Chubb is that he doesn't catch passes. If you look at the game script of this, where people think that KC is going to be ahead, that maybe Nick Chubb doesn't really fit that bill. But if you look at him, he had 4 targets last week. He has spikes like randomly, like 2 weeks ago, he had a 5-target game where he had 38 yards and 5 catches. So like, it's not that they won't use him in the passing game. I think that's a narrative that's a little bit overblown. He is the guy that is going to get the majority of the work on the ground. He's going to be the guy that is lower owned. He's going to be one of those guys, if you have some teams that are struggling a little bit, like finding a way to get to these guys like Nick Chubb, I think is something that should be a priority. So I'm with you. I like Chubb significantly more, even price considered, than Kareem Hunt. You have any interest, I guess, like, because we're going to be talking about these guys versus the Tampa Bay guys, Pete. So like, is Fournette a little bit more expensive, a guy that you'd rather have than taking a shot on Darrell Williams or some of these other kind of cheaper pieces? Like, if you're going to be playing, like you said, the Mahomes, like kind of players that are very expensive, like I think there's some people that are going to talk themselves into Fournette if they can afford it in game number 4.
If we knew that Ronald Jones was officially ruled out, I do think Fournette would be by far the best of these cheap running back plays that we're discussing. But it sounds like Ronald Jones is going to go. The overnight reports are Ronald Jones isn't quite fully healthy, but he's going to play with Fournette starting, and they've been referencing that he's a better pass catcher. So I do think if they get in a negative game script, we will see a lot of Fournette, but it's just enough work if Ronald Jones is stealing some of the early down work and that, valuable goal line stuff. I think it makes Fournette a pretty fragile projection. And we've seen even bell cow Fournette flop in some bad spots too. So I'm not as enthused about him as a slam dunk option. I think if you do want to leave him in your flex, say you're playing some of this 2-game stuff and you want to pivot him to an Emmanuel Sanders or something, if Ronald Jones is active, I think that is completely justifiable. But I kind of would prefer to take my preference of the Chiefs running backs early and just get that information.
Let's run through some props on this one, because there are some interesting ones. Hartman is one of the more popular ones in terms of, I guess, projection versus the actual prop number. The line on his receptions in this game, 2.5. How do we feel about Mecole Hartman, 2.5 receptions, over or under? We start with you, Peter.
I like the over in that one.
Projected for 2.7. So I don't know how you get 0.7, but projected for that.
Yeah, I mean, 3 catches for Mecole Hardman here. They use him in creative ways too. You can probably get a couple gimmies with like a bubble screen and stuff. They don't have to be the home run hitter. So yeah, I'm taking the over there.
I actually like the over on the Hardman props right now. Even the receiving yards one is set, like at least what I'm looking at is like 33.5. So I think that's like it's kind of, but I like the receiving or the receptions one a little bit better. So I'm with Pete.
Jarvis Landry, 5 receptions, over or under? What do you got, Joe?
That one's pretty close at the projections I'm looking at, but I think over, just based on game script. I think that Jarvis Landry is one of those guys that he's going to get his. No matter what happens in this game, I have a hard time believing Jarvis Landry doesn't get his.
Agree on that. What do you got, Pete?
Yeah, Sam, I'm taking the over there. I think he's probably going to get 8 or 9 targets today, and they are, easy dink and dunk stuff right over the middle. I think he'll be a big part of the game plan, whether they're hanging in there or getting clobbered. So I like that over.
I want to give 2 more Cleveland ones here. A name that I haven't heard mentioned, forgive me if it has been, Donovan Peoples-Jones, 1.5 receptions today, over or under? Pete?
I'll say over. I think
Joe.
He's a reasonable, just dart throw in this game when everyone's talking themselves into all these other cheap flyers. I don't think he's significantly worse. They're going to have to throw in this game. So it wouldn't surprise me if he got 2 catches in this game. I don't think that's not super unreasonable.
We're really talking about big numbers here. What do you got?
I guess I'll take the other side on this one, just because the Chiefs perimeter defense has been really good. They've allowed the 4th fewest fantasy points to wide receivers there on the perimeter. So I kind of think that the guys who are going to succeed are going to be over the middle, Landry, Hooper, and stuff. So that's kind of how I'm leading. That said, if this game gets out of hand, it's just like everyone, you get the over, you get the over. So I'm not ruling that out, but I think I would probably bet against it.
Well, a big part of that too is the spread on this game is 9.5, 10 in some places, and it's it's projected to be a blowout in a lot. I don't think I see it that way. I think this line is a lot closer, and I'm in heavily on Browns plus 9.5. But if that's, you're 100% right, Pete. If this opens up, there's a lot of fantasy points to be found. There's a lot of prop bets that you can go over on. One more, Austin Hooper. You mentioned him, 4 catches. I presume that you're taking the over on this one, Pete, because you're talking other people in on him. I understand there's some red zone element there, but I imagine you're over on Austin Hooper, 4 catches today.
Yeah, things have been really rounding into form for him because earlier in the season he was losing and splitting work with Harrison Bryant and Njoku. But last week, we've started to see him when the chips are on the table. They're going to Hooper as their guy. He played 90% of the snaps. He had 11 targets, the second most of the season. And the Chiefs have been vulnerable over the middle. From a DFS perspective, he was one of those guys. He's a standout point per dollar play because he was pushing Kelsey out of the optimal lineups for DFS this week. That's how well he was projecting relative to his salary. So yeah, I think Hooper is a very nice play. But I will add the caveat: he's going to be very popular too.
Joe, and I presume you have the under just because somebody has to disagree at some point here.
I'd love to disagree, but I like Austin Hooper a lot. I think that 4 receptions, like Pete said, that's where you want to attack Kansas City. There's going to be the game script in his favor, all that stuff. So yeah, no, Austin Hooper, he's going to be super popular, I think, just because he's a very cheap option in a game where you're going to need some cheap options if you're stacking it up.
All right, we've already kind of shifted over to New Orleans a little bit with the Leonard Fournette talk, but let's get into it heavy. The line on this one, New Orleans 2.5. They're at home. They have a bit of a crowd. 53% of the handle, 52% of the tickets is on this. Bucks plus 125 on the money line, so not a tremendous amount of value there, but you knew that already based on the spread. 66% of the tickets, money line tickets, are currently in on Tampa Bay, and the total in this one, and this is where I'm going to make my nut this weekend, 83% of the tickets are on the over, and that's where I pounce. I'm all the way in on the under, but you guys got to find points somewhere. 53 is still a good deal of them. Everyone's in on the Kansas City Browns game. Where's the value in this Tampa Bay game? Would either of you dare to go with one of the quarterbacks in this contest in a lineup? It would be bold. It'd be bold going with a 40-year-old, but sometimes you got to get desperate, especially if you got a Singletary hanging out. What are you thinking, Joe?
Both these guys are so cheap, Dieter. That's the thing. We've been talking about these guys all week as like decent options because it is game number 4. You can stack them in completely different ways. If you've got like 3 or 4 spots open on your roster, like this is a really intriguing spot. Like just to kind of, say in a different way what you were saying, Dieter, like the sharp money does seem to be on the under in this one. So that's scaring me a little bit. 62%. 25% of the bets on the under. Everyone wants to see Breeze and Brady, gunslingers, just going out there, putting up a ton of points. Both these defenses are pretty good. So, Pete, I guess, do you have any concerns for our lineups where we've decided to pivot over a little more to the New Orleans and Tampa Bay side on some teams that were bored? If basically a lot of sharp people think this game could go under.
Yeah, the thing that helps offset it, right, is the further of the skill position players. Latavius Murray and Taysom Hill are the vultures. They are the ones that everyone loses their mind because you own Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas, and then they come in and steal these touchdowns. So removing them is very, very big. And we had seen even last week, as someone who was sweating Latavius Murray, Alvin Kamara was getting every single red zone touch. So I think his usage is going to be off the charts today. And I am leaning toward trying to find ways to get Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas into as many lineups as possible and hope that they can dominate the usage. And then if they succeed, you get a screen pass that Alvin Kamara scores with and Michael Thomas catches a slant. All of a sudden, they're going to carry Drew Brees along with them. You said how cheap he is. He allows you to get in one of the other Chiefs studs, pay up for a Nick Chubb. Like going with one of these cheap quarterbacks, we didn't talk about Baker a lot. I think he qualifies too. It really unlocks getting in these studs. And if the field is all going Mahomes and studs and duds with him, I kind of like going cheap quarterback and getting studs throughout my lineup.
What about Brady, though? Brady has to be a viable option. I understand that everyone wants to be in on the Saints. They're the favorites in this game. You have reliable guys on that side, but certainly Tampa Bay has weapons in and of itself. We might not know who the running back is, but Mike Evans is pretty damn good. Godwin's pretty damn good. They have this guy Gronkowski who's pretty damn good. Brate's pretty good. Is there there has to be value, Joe, on the Tampa Bay side. I know everyone's going to be looking to the Saints. Let's take it a level deeper. Where are we going with the Bucks?
Yeah, I think these quarterbacks are both gonna be they're gonna be similarly owned, like probably anywhere from 8% to 15%, and on a 4-game slate, that's not a huge difference anyway. No. So there's different ways you can get creative with these teams. Obviously, we have Lattimore versus Evans, a matchup that Evans has struggled with, if you care about that sort of thing. But he's also going to be one of the lower owned pieces in that. I prefer Godwin. I do think that there's a pretty decent pass funnel on each of these. So I guess that's in favor of the over, is that there could be a decent amount of plays in this game just because neither team is going to run the ball super effectively, in my opinion. So the upside of this stack is just you get more information after we know what happens in Kansas City. So you can basically, like, if you the Brady example, if you have a Brady stack that's like maybe a 2-man stack with Brady, Godwin, and like Gronkowski or something like that, and things go really bad, maybe you pivot that over to like a Brady, Evans, and Cameron Brate, something like that, to where you have a chance to actually pass people. It's really valuable to have that KC context, but at least have the flexibility if you do go with one of the quarterbacks in this game.
The Mike Evans-Lattimore matchup that you mentioned, Evans doesn't have a catch in his last 3 games when squared up with Lattimore. 0 for 6 on targets. Great. Seems not awesome, but that said, they do mix it up a little bit. It's not like you're getting a Richard Sherman situation where he locks on to one side of the field, or they're going to mix it up. But you mentioned that you don't think that either of these teams is going to run it, and we have a question with New Orleans. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. I do understand that Tampa Bay does, defend against the rush probably better than anybody in the NFL. They're going to have their linebackers back, which I think only increases their chances of stopping the rush. But Kamara can do some stuff, man. Like, I understand that not having Latavius Murray maybe puts Kamara in a more compromised position. He has to now run it a little bit more. He loses some explosiveness maybe on those passing plays that Sean Payton wants to set up for him. Maybe they're a little bit more basic, but it's not like he's not a super freak. And if he can get to the second level, he's going to get to the third level because he makes dudes miss. What are we thinking about Kamara? Let's have a deeper conversation about Alvin Kamara inside of this game and inside of this Saints system without a Taysom Hill, without a Latavius Murray. What are you expecting from him in particular, Joe?
Yes, I mean, it's priced in, so that's the positive side.
Right.
He's only $7,900. Normally, he's a little bit more expensive than that. We've seen the upside even when there's been guys like Latavius and Taysom Hill in the game, taking away at least some sort of touchdown equity there. Now those guys aren't there, right? So Alvin Kamara has got to be one of the bigger locks on this slate to score a touchdown, I would imagine. So at that price, at that price point, with a condensed offense, like, yes, it's not a good matchup on the ground, but it's priced in. And he also is so active in the passing game that I think his usage is still going to remain super elite. Do you disagree with any of that, Pete?
No, I think Alvin Kamara has an insane floor and an insane ceiling in this spot. The Bucs have also given up a ton of catches to running backs too. Yes. That's kind of been one of their leaks. So I think this just sets up awesome for Kamara. I can't poke any holes in Kamara today.
I really do like Tampa Bay's linebackers, and I think having both David and White in there with their ability to cover the entirety of the field and attack, they're definitely going to be in a too high safety look for most of the game, I imagine. I think Tampa's going to really be flying around on defense. And if Kamara can break through that, then the entire Saints offense is going to break through it, and he's going to eat and everybody else is going to eat, because that will soften them up significantly. But if they can stop Kamara, which easier said than done, that creates a whole new paradigm. And that forces Drew Brees to really have to kind of push the ball downfield a little bit. He won't have those outlets that he usually has for the short throws. I don't think he can do it. I'm in on the under on this game. Like, this is my one hard stance of the week. I can see how Kansas City has to kind of control themselves, whereas the Browns have to play a damn near perfect game, and that's just to cover. So it's a lot easier to tell, a wild stallion to tame it than it is to get somebody to play at a level that they're not used to playing at, to step up another level. With the Saints and Tampa, I'm looking at these two quarterbacks. I'm looking at two defenses that know what they're doing. We haven't even talked about the New Orleans defense. They're pretty damn good too. Tom Brady had a lot of problems last week against Washington. And we all know Washington has a good defense, but come on, man. Like, Washington, like, you're going toe to toe with Taylor Heineke or whatever the hell his name is. Like, that's not appropriate. Drew Brees, my stance has been clear. I think they're secret trash. This game, I think, is going to be a big, muddy mess. Who does that help in fantasy? If this game is on the under, if we're going to go and we're going to say, Dieter, you're right, for the first time in a long time, this game's going to be an under. Obviously, that doesn't portend for a lot of fantasy points, but somebody has to thrive in that sort of a game script. So I go to my game script expert here, PeterOverzet. If this game does get mucky, if this game does get muddy, even though it's in a dome, who do you like on the fantasy side?
Yeah, well, that's why I like Kamara and Thomas so much, because
Okay.
I think they're immune to basically any of these scripts. And even in a gross game, they're going to be getting peppered with those underneath targets. And then I would say on the flip side, you probably are looking at Chris Godwin as kind of the standout play, the guy that's going to be working over the middle. Antonio Brown's seen a decent amount of targets, but he's also not playing as many snaps, not running as many routes, being used a little further down the field. So if we are, envisioning a really gross game, I think Godwin's probably that safety blanket underneath. And, Joe mentioned Brait earlier. You probably see the tight ends underneath. But yeah, I would say I would rank it like Kamara, Thomas, Godwin as like the safest guys, regardless of how this game plays out.
How do you rank the tight ends in this game, Joe? How would you? I mean, you mentioned Brait, but Gronkowski's there. You have Cook hanging around. Like, how would you rank these tight ends if you had to take one of them, understanding that Gronk has the name recognition, so he's going to be played more? How would you play it out? How would you handicap it?
Yeah, the good news is, so if you have a flex available, even if you've already played Travis Kelce on a team, like these guys are all going to be super low owned. So I think Jared Cook's going to provide a lot of leverage. He's still someone that could come in and at least take that touchdown away. He's 4K, so he's a little bit more expensive than some of these other guys, but I think he'd be the guy that I would have number one. And then Gronkowski and Brait, it's a little bit of a coin flip. I don't think a lot of people like it. It's in theory, it's nice to say you're going to play Cameron Brait at 2,900 because he's so cheap, but he doesn't project like that much worse than Rob Gronkowski. He was out there for a decent amount of snaps last week. Obviously, he's been used a little bit deeper down the field, which is intriguing. So I think that both of those guys are probably okay. Gronkowski probably an easier bet for a touchdown. Jared Cook, best raw projection, but none of these guys are going to be owned. So I think that it would probably be if I'm playing a Brady team and I need another piece, add one of those guys. If I want to bring back, I could see using one of those guys in that capacity as well. But I guess do any of these guys separate for you, Pete?
Yeah.
Cook, again, once you remove Taysom Hill and Latavius Murray, that, bumps, I would say, his red zone touchdown expectation just a smidge. And I do think Tampa Bay has been a little bit more stout against the run. And I think Jared Cook is a guy that will see a decent amount of targets here. So, yeah, if I had to pick a tight end, I definitely prefer Jared Cook out of those guys. But I think Gronk and Bray are fine flyers. Neither of them project as like great values at their salary. Gronk at 3,600, he's projecting, I'm looking at Leone's right now, has him for 8 DraftKings points, whereas he has Jared Cook at 10.2. So a decent amount of separation there for just 400 extra bucks.
Let's run through the 3 scenarios here with Jones, just so that we can kind of play it all out. 1, Jones is out. What does that mean for Fournette? 2, Jones is in and is kind of, mucky about, and you're not really sure if he's actually going to play or not. Like, he's in, but he's not. That's obviously a situation we have to kind of handicap. And then the third one is he's in and he looks 100%. What are we expecting from him overall? Joe, what if we're running scenarios real fast, like, are we in too much of a danger zone here to even mess around with Leonard Fournette in DK? Like, it does feel as if they're, the 3 scenarios present, they can all be equally likely, and I don't like any of that.
Yeah, it's a weird slate for these cheaper running backs, right? Because there's so much like that could happen with Fournette, Bell, Kareem Hunt, Darrell Williams, like that core. So picking the right one's obviously going to be important, but like Fournette's the one that's going to project the best. But I think that the value that you get from a lower ownership guys in KC, but also just more information going into the rest of it, like just leaving that slot open and fading Darrell Williams or Le'Veon Bell just to play Fournette as a hammer doesn't necessarily feel like the best idea, but I think I'm probably just going to end up with more of these KC guys in the high total, better game environment. Just a really tough matchup on both sides of the ball in the run game in Tampa Bay, New Orleans.
But you talked about it a little bit earlier, Pete. What if you can expand on it?
Yeah, I think that Ronald Jones has just been this guy that has been so hard to crack, and Arians is so herky-jerky with his usage of him, and now coming off of this injury, I do think my projection would be like 75% work for Fournette and 25% Rojo. But again, we've seen weirder situations where he'll ride the hot hand. Like, one of these guys makes a mistake, Arians, loses his shit, and then the other guy gets the rest of the carry. So it is fragile. I do want to circle back real quick on the Le'Veon Bell, Darrell Williams. Leone's been messaging us. I think he's a little more on Le'Veon Bell than me. There was a thread going on with John Paulson and Nathan Janke from PFF, and he was under the impression that that kind of lopsided work in week 16 I was referencing was due to Le'Veon Bell being injured. The thing for me is he's still $900 more and Le'Veon. So like those $900 today are meaningful in what else you can do with your lineup. And he's going to, maybe I want to backpedal a little bit on my confidence on Darrell Williams, but I still think when you factor in those other factors, ownership and price, I do prefer Darrell Williams. But I just wanted to throw that out there that I don't think playing Le'Veon is bad.
Well, what does Le'Veon bring? I mean, it's hard to really point to a game where you go, oh, that's the Le'Veon Bell of old since he's gotten to Kansas City. I mean, he's gotten some workload, but like, I don't know. Have we seen anything close to a ceiling that would make you feel super comfortable playing him in general? Understanding everything you just said, but like, I don't know. Is anyone like really banging down the doors to get Le'Veon Bell in their lineup? Have we felt anything that makes us feel some sort of a way today? Am I wrong here, Joe? You guys pay more attention to this than I do. I'm on the betting side.
No, I mean, you're right. I think all of these guys that we're discussing, like, there's not going to be a ton of efficiency for any of them, probably. I mean, you're basically trying to decide who's going to get that touchdown. The one thing that's at least been nice about Le'Veon Bell in the games where he's been used as a decent, not even necessarily a bell cow, but like 10 plus touches, he still had a couple targets in those games as well. So he's a guy that can stay on field, the veteran presence. I get all of that. But one thing I'm not shocked about, Pete, is that Leone is on the old side of the he just loves the olds, man. So I don't get it.
I think the thesis for Le'Veon Bell is the Chiefs have this massive team total. Everyone envisions them to score a ton. And if he's the goal line back, it's very likely he can just Todd Gurley style fall into the end zone here once, maybe twice. If he catches a few passes, the floor. I do agree with you. I don't see a monster ceiling here. I don't think he's going to get 20 plus touches. He's not going to rip off any long runs. He's only going to get what is handed to him. And also in those previous weeks, it was also week 13 that they missed. Bell had 2 receptions, Williams had 1 reception, and then it was flipped in week 16. Bell 1 reception, Williams 4 receptions. So you can't admit that one of them's going to separate as a pass catcher. Actually, how they've used them has been like alternating drives, basically, or alternating multiple series in a row. So when they are being used, they're going to be used as a bell cow. It's just, it could be a hot hand situation. And I prefer to break ties to the cheaper guy, the lower owned guy, and the younger guy. Where's
the good chalk? Out of all these games, where's the good chalk this week? Is there somebody that comes to mind when I use that phrase, Pete?
Yeah, it's those it's the Saints guys. It's Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas. I mean, Michael Thomas as well is so underpriced at 6,700.
Wow.
And I think now without Latavius, you could also say Alvin Kamara is way underpriced at 7,900. I mean, Joe, I think Michael Thomas should be like 7,700 and Kamara should be like 88.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think both of those guys, like if you're just literally looking at the guys that are like mispriced or like you can feel good about investing even at that salary, it's the Saints guys for sure. You can even throw Drew Brees into that mix at this point at 5,600. Wow. He's just so cheap. Like for these Kansas City guys to like truly get there, they got to have a massive, massive game. And it's something that like we talk about, but you still like, when you're looking at that price tag, 7,800 for Travis Kelce, when you could play Alvin Kamara, who's going to touch the ball 22, 24 times, like it kind of puts things a little bit into perspective. Tyreek Hill, he's 8K. Obviously, he can break off those huge plays that he can break the slate with 45 points at any moment. But the volatility involved in those versus a Michael Thomas slant boy that's just going to get his no matter what. Alvin Kamara is going to get his no matter what. It just depends on where your team's at. I think that if you want to just kind of shoot for the fences, these Kansas City guys, I mean, they're the highest total on the slate for a reason. They're going to be popular for a reason, all that stuff. But I definitely don't mind the idea of being a little bit more Saints heavy than the field today.
Well, I will say this about Thomas. There is the possibility of them taking away the slants with this is going to be the buzzword of the week, because I think it's going to honestly play a big factor in both the Browns and the Buccaneers defensive game plans, but going into quarters coverage and having a too high safety look and having those safeties make breaks and having them make reads. And Joe, you know, being in Minnesota, you know all about this kind of too high look with what they do with their safeties. You can take away the slants with that. And especially for Tampa with their great linebackers, so they can go into a cover 6 sort of a look and kind of isolate on one. I mean, it's Thomas. He'll probably still get his, but if Tampa Bay can execute that game plan, which we can't say for certain they're going to actually have it. You know, they do blitz a lot, so it probably does put that into jeopardy. But if they can do that, you can take away Thomas and you can have a better, you can maybe improve your run defense. Again, another reason that I think they're in on the under. I get you with the chalk. Is Chubb not going to qualify for you just because of the presence of Hunt? Is he not good chalk this week because there's the other guy who's hanging out there? I don't know.
He's not going to be chalk.
Who's going to be
I don't think
Chubb?
Chubb's
Hunt or
gonna-
Chubb? I see like a 2% difference basically.
Wow, really?
I think
that's
Hunt.
silly to me.
Yeah.
Hunt.
I was looking at this yesterday because I was averaging ownership projections, and both Hunt and Chubb had the same ownership. But my thought is that just that kind of studs and duds thing, that people are going to try to go high end Chiefs, and Hunt just fits that build. And then on top of it, bake in the uncertainty here. Rojo and Fournette, Le'Veon Bell and Dart. Like, people are going to be like, hey, I can just play Hunt. Like, I know his role. I know they're going to be trailing. People view him as this game, pass flow type back. So I do think Hunt is going to have more. And I think Chubb is going to be that popular because people want to get in Kamara, Michael Thomas, Kelsey Hill, like someone expensive gets squeezed. That's going to be Nick Chubb.
Well, Kareem Hunt is the same. Like, people want to watch their Chiefs, Pete. So he's first. Like, who's going to put in Leonard Fournette when they can watch Kareem Hunt first in their Mahomes teams, right? So that's like the two.
Was there value there? Is there value in letting everybody tucker themselves out with the Browns and then you're sitting in the next game?
Hey, why don't we ask the people who played Devin Singletary how they're feeling about that sort of concept right now, right?
All right, perfect.
At least if you lose late, you have a chance to enjoy the first couple of games. I mean, if you lose early, you're totally screwed, and then you're sitting there just lamenting. I'd rather sweat than lament. That's just me.
Yeah.
But
I think the more we kind of talk through the dynamics too is like everyone is trying to chase that Browns Steelers game from last year, the game where we see 60 points. Everyone has gravitated to this Chiefs Browns games. The stars align. The Chiefs put up points all year. The Browns are coming off all these shootout games. This is the game we're going to identify. So to me, I feel like we should take this opportunity to gobble up this Saints value that on another slate would be the mega chalk.
Oh, no question. 100%.
Yeah. And so I think I love that idea now of getting over to Breeze, getting over to Thomas and Kamara. Pick your spots in this game. There's going to be points, but it also could be extremely spread out. You could see, take yesterday, for example, too. I mean, the Bills, you get the pick six. Like that offense, who we know can put up 40, it just craters. Like these kind of things can happen. And I actually saw someone in the chat saying we got 35 degrees and Arrowhead, strong wind gusts up to 20 miles per hour. I don't think anyone's adjusting their projections, but it could be a slower, game than we maybe want it to be.
Yeah, everyone knows that the wind at Independence, Missouri, where that stadium is, gets real wild. Luckily, it is a fully enclosed bowl, so it just kind of has a swoop to it. Having covered enough games there, I understand the wind patterns, but it's something. It's something. I don't think it will affect the passing game as much as it would affect the kicking game, and in particular the long kicking game. But we're not really talking about the long kicking game here, are we? Unless we're talking about the total, in which case I think I'm in on the under on Kansas City too. I can't get over the fact that Kansas City just kind of dicked around with opponents all year, right? They got, and honestly, all you had to do, the two games that they had that were really tight for them were against the Raiders of all teams. And the Raiders just played quarters coverage and told the Chiefs, do everything you want underneath. You can take 15 yards a clip. We're basically playing prevent defense against you. And Kansas City's like, nah, that's boring. We're not going to do that. And they tried to go over the top and they do stupid stuff. And Mahomes, honestly, the entire story of his season is he just gets bored. So if he can just not get bored by taking Travis Kelce for 12 yards every play, which will be there, the Chiefs are going to win in a landslide as the line predicts. If Mahomes does what he's done the entire season and decides, now let's do some cool shit instead, the Browns are in on this one. And by the way, it's probably going to be the under because I don't think the Browns are putting up 30 in this game. So there's a lot of reasons for me to kind of stay away from this Chiefs-Kansas City game, whereas you go into a Tampa Bay, New Orleans games, there's not a lot of variability. Honestly, we know who these two teams are. We know what they're good at. We know what they're not good at. There's no weather variability whatsoever. You don't have to worry about either quarterback being rattled by the moment. I'm with you, Pete. And Joe, you're in on this. But it feels like Pete's stance. Like, I'm with you. Like, let's play the later game. There might not be as high of a ceiling, but the floor is much higher. Whereas I think it's just too insane to play early on. And there's too many variables. And You want to play Tyreek Hill? Like I'm not going to be sweating over a shovel pass at the goal line with Tyreek Hill. Like I just don't want to do it. I'm totally out on that. I don't know. Am I picking up what you're laying down here?
Dieter, you mentioned something that kind of picked my ears up a little bit. Like, do you think that this Browns team is similar in any way to the Ravens and like the way that they're built, the way that they kind of want to win? Like, if they want to win with the run game, they have some weapons, but like it's not like a game-breaking quarterback back there. I don't know. I'm just trying to piece my way through.
You know who they remind me a lot of? They remind me a lot. I mean, it's not that dissimilar. They run the same offensive system and they run the same defensive system. It's last year's 49ers teams, this year's Rams teams. Teams that run the wide zone, they want to run the ball. They will not have Baker Mayfield throw if they don't have to. Like straight up, they'll go full Garoppolo in last year's playoffs and just say, we're just going to keep running the ball against you. And they might be able to get away with it against Kansas City. And on the flip side, they're just going to rush four. They're going to try to get pressure. They're going to drop back into zone. And they're going to say, if you want to pick us apart on the short stuff, Mahomes, go to town. But you're not getting over the top. You're just straight up not getting over the top. And so many of the Chiefs' plays are just Tyreek Hill, you go way deep, and either the safeties come with you and we take, 20 yards, or, you're wide open and we just throw it over the top. But how many throws have we seen Mahomes try to make this year where he's just like, just throw it over? He just gets bored with taking the easy stuff. And that's when the Chiefs have gotten into problems. That's when they've come under on their individual team totals. That's why they didn't cover for the vast majority of the season. They were terrible against the spread. And you're giving me 10 points against a Browns team that at least identifies as a squad that should be able to not necessarily slow the game down or limit possessions, but effectively attack this Kansas City defense and effectively limit to whatever degree you can limit, because sometimes the talent is just too much, but to whatever degree you can limit this Chiefs offense and dare them to do the things that they shouldn't do. I don't know. That's why I'm all the way in on the Browns with the points. I feel good about an under because honestly, if the Browns are going to get the points, it's probably going to be an under anyway. I don't know what point we're not going to acknowledge that Kansas City dicked around all year and they're just going to flip the switch. Like, I've covered too much basketball with great teams to know that just doesn't happen. And I don't think it happens in football either.
One thing I will just say about the narrative about the Browns being this run first team is over the past month, they've had the 7th pass heaviest game script adjusted offense. And what Stefanski's been doing with them too, it's almost like they're passing to set up the run now.
Yes.
They're using play action a ton. They're going 4 or 5 wide. They're doing lots of the screen passes, all kinds of creative stuff. And then once defenses are on their heels, they're giving the little, inside handoff to Nick Chubb and all of that. So I think this offense is maybe more dynamic than our priors were on it. And that's why I do think we can see a ton of points here, and why I don't think, the Browns are necessarily screwed if they get behind and they can't just pound the rock, because they have shown this creativity and their willingness to open it up.
There is a level with Stefanski that of pragmatism that I don't think is, often seen in guys who run the wide zone. Like I don't see it with LaFleur. I don't see it with Shanahan. I don't see it with McVay in LA. He is. You're right. You're 100% right. He has been passing to set up the run in recent weeks because he knows teams have keyed in on the run game. And honestly, they haven't had the full slate of the offensive line for a minute, and so they're trying to get the ball out of Baker Mayfield's hands fast. They're doing a quick passing. I think they get back to the run today. I think Baker, if he throws an interception, they're probably screwed. Like, that's the big issue. And right now, by the way, the prop on Baker Mayfield interception 0.5. So it's a yes or no proposition. It'd be hard for me not to say yes. I don't know. Where do you feel about that one, Joe? Does Baker throw a pick today?
I think that's a reasonable over. I always struggle with those because usually the under is the sharp side of some of those ones. But yeah, one interception. I think that's one that in Arrowhead, especially if there's going to be any wind and that sort of thing, maybe one hangs up and that happens. So I'm on
especially
that.
if they get behind too. If Baker has to throw it a lot, he's
pass
definitely
attempts. Yeah, it's similar to us picking defenses, right? You just want volume at that point. So
totally.
Pete, should we indulge the chat on at least one of these Tyreek Hill versus Travis Kelce things? Just because people that's a main decision point on this. I get what Dieter's saying, like, if they want to really just like stop them over the top, stop Tyreek over the top, like this team has been brutal against tight ends all year. So like, this is like just such a smash spot for Kelce, but like people are literally sitting there with their lineups like, who do we play? So what are your thoughts on like the 1v1, I guess?
So how I've been approaching the 1v1 is if I have Mahomes, I prefer Hill because I'm chasing those two mega deep pass touchdown bombs. You get the correlation. Whereas if I'm not playing Mahomes, I kind of prefer Kelce as my one-off because then you're looking for the death by 1,000 cuts, 10 targets over the middle, him racking up a little yards after catch. Maybe he doesn't find the end zone, but he still puts up 20 points just on a nice PPR day. Le'Veon Bell steals a couple of the touchdowns. Like that's kind of just how I'm telling it in my head as a tiebreaker. But yeah, you're flipping coins. I think there's a little more opportunity cost at wide receiver to where I don't mind going down to Hooper. I don't mind going to Jared Cook just because that price tag and the way the builds work. So I'm leaning Tyreek Hill, but I have a decent amount of Kelce. I mean, they're both great plays.
That's the moral of the story. They're both fine.
No, listen. I mean, the entire show has been nitpicking over good plays. Like, oh, should we have Michael Thomas or should we take Travis Kelce with our money? Like, pretty good spots to be in, all things considered. Do we have a super sleeper? Do either of you guys have a guy who I don't know if you want to give it away because there's money to be had here, but a guy who you're like, hey, throw him in there, whether he's way down low on the totem pole or just somebody that no one's really talking about who's maybe making a little bit too much money for everybody's blood. Who stands out to you, Pete, as a super sleeper?
Super sleeper today. I wanted it to be Darrell Williams. He was a guy that I was kind of loading up all my lineups with. I do like let's do this. I think as much as we love these Saints studs, I do think one of Jared Cook or Emmanuel Sanders could have just a really, really sick game at sub 10% ownership, maybe even sub 5% ownership, depending on the contest. So we've talked about Jared Cook a decent amount. I'll give Emmanuel Sanders a little love. I'll say Emmanuel Sanders super sleeper today.
That plays we hadn't mentioned him yet. That was great.
I was literally, whoever you took between Cook and Sanders, I was just going to take the other one because I think that's where the leverage is for sure. Yeah.
When it comes to betting, where are you guys lying? I'm in on Cleveland getting the points, and I'm going to take the under in that first game. I might even be so enticed as to take a Browns 375 money line. I've talked about it so much with the Saints and Buccaneers game. I'm not going anywhere near the points. I'm not going anywhere near the money line. I do like the under in that game. I don't think we're putting enough respect on the defenses in those games, names, whatever the hell that meant. So under on that one. Where do you guys stand on the betting side of this now that we try to pull it back to linemovement.eu?
Yeah, I think that I'm probably I'm probably a sick fish here, but I like Kansas City. I know that they haven't been covering all year. I think there's a chance they go out and just absolutely dump truck Cleveland in this one. So I'm on KC in this one. I think there's still a chance Andy Reid off of bye, man. Like there's a chance that they just come out here and just it's not even close.
6-5 against the spread, and they haven't played in 3. We haven't even talked about it. They haven't played in 3 damn weeks
against the spread. This team against the spread. It's such a small sample. I'm just saying. I was using the favor of my argument. That's
over decades.
I said I don't. Okay, fine, whatever. I like Kansas City. I like Kansas City. I like the under in both games, so I think we're in line on that one. And I'll take Tampa Bay, even though I think that game is. I think there's still like something to be said for maybe it's finally New Orleans time. They've had some really tough run in the playoffs these last couple of years, so it'd be nice to see Breeze get a shot at another championship. But I do think Tampa Bay in that side. Are you in on
the money line with Tampa Bay, or are you taking the points?
I'll take the points on that one. Yeah.
Okay. What do you got, Pete?
I mean, you mentioned it earlier. I would say my favorite bet would probably be the under in the Saints Bucks game. I haven't been able to come up with a good stand on the Chiefs Browns one. I think I am maybe leaning under there as well.
I do love Nick coming in on the chat, trying to remind us all that the Browns lost to the Jets recently. They did beat the Steelers.
Too sharp.
I mean, we're over. I mean, as if this entire show, from my perspective, hasn't been complete overanalyzing. How many times did I mention goddamn quarters defenses? But let's not overthink it too much. The Browns are playing good football. The Chiefs, as Joe said, they can open it up. The Chiefs could score 100 points if they wanted to at any given time. Like the Kansas City Chiefs have no limit to what they can do. The issue is I just haven't seen it enough this year. And while I think they win, I'll take those points. Should we tell the good folks about blitzbet blitzbet.eu. That's it. I had to get it together. You guys figure out what time you're doing. Are you guys sweating it out tonight? Are you guys having the zone?
We're a little up in the air on time. I believe we are going to start around when that game is starting. The Bucs Saints game. We might start closer to halftime, maybe a little bit earlier. We'll firm that up once we're done with these lineups and we see how this game goes. But Joe, I would say earliest at the start of the game, latest halftime of Bucs Saints would be my guess.
Yeah, might as well just have the people go to Twitter, follow Line Movement on Twitter, and then that's what we'll let you guys know when Tilt Space is.
Yep, Tilt Space sometime around halftime. But definitely follow Line Movement on Twitter, and you will get that information. You can also follow Joe and Peter on there. They are active on the Twitter machine, blitzbet.eu for all of your betting needs. Folks, thanks for joining us. Sorry we didn't get to every single question in the chat because your boy's internet sucks. That's on me. Joe, Pete, thanks again. Looking forward to Tilt Space later on tonight. Looking forward to finding out when the hell that is. But, have a great Sunday, everybody. Appreciate it.